ahead.
Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much, Suzanne, for being here.
We're so thrilled that Suzanne is here. And I'm going to read a little bit about Suzanne. Everything about her will be posted on the YouTube video. By the way, this is going to be a YouTube video. I know that we say in the information that we read at the beginning of the meeting that everything remains confidential, but these presentations have helped all of us to move through this very difficult period of pandemic and everything else that's been going on. When we had to postpone our second Helping Parents Heal conference, all of the presenters kindly stepped up and agreed to do their presentations by Zoom. So we have them on our YouTube channel, and this allows for parents who are not in the United States, parents who might not be able to make the meeting, to be able to watch them later on. So we're so grateful for that. Let me go ahead and introduce Suzanne, who's very near and dear to my heart. Suzanne Giesemann is a messenger of hope and the founder and teacher of The Awakened Way, a path to knowing who you are and why you're here. She is a former U.S. Navy commander who served as a commanding officer and aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on 9/11. Today, Suzanne provides stunning evidence of the existence of universal consciousness and of our interconnectedness. Suzanne is the author of 13 books. She has been a keynote presenter for organizations including Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies, the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and the International Association for Near-Death Studies, as well as for Helping Parents Heal at our first annual conference. She has led weekend retreats at well-known spiritual centers, including Omega Institute, Lily Dale Assembly, the Monroe Institute, and Unity Village. She has written and narrated the popular mediumship series of Hemisync recordings. Suzanne's gift of evidential mediumship has been tested and verified. Her work has been recognized as highly credible by noted afterlife researchers and organizations. Whether in her books and CDs, her classes and workshops, her Messages of Hope Unity online radio show, or her one-on-one sessions, Suzanne brings messages of hope, healing, and love that go straight to the heart and illuminate the light of awareness within. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Suzanne Giesemann, Messenger of Hope.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Irene. That's my goal tonight, to illuminate a lot of things, but mostly the fact that our kids who have passed are still right here. You know, you thank me for coming tonight. That's one night out of how many that Elizabeth and Irene and others have been doing this every night or most nights of the week, and meetings in the middle of the day. Your energy and your dedication to helping so many shining light parents is just beyond belief. So you guys are the ones that get the applause. So you were talking about Edgar Cayce's ARE, an organization out in Virginia Beach. And just this past Sunday, I did a channeling session online, brought my guides through. You all can find that on YouTube. But our dear friends, Mike and Beth Passakarnis, were here help me in the channeling session to bring good energy. And some of you may recognize their name. Mike and Beth are two of the main characters in one of my books, Wolf's Message. And I know a lot of you have read that book. Their son, Mike Jr., was nicknamed Wolf. And it's the story of how he came to me in a reading with a message for all of humanity. But we were talking about how we first met. And we met at Edgar Cayce's ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment. And I share this with you now because my goal tonight is to let you know how much our kids and any of our loved ones who have passed are helping to guide us from across the veil. We may not even be aware of it, but so many thoughts that we have are put there. We're inspired by our own loved ones across the veil. And in the case of Mike and Beth, Wolf had passed a few months, I'm not sure how much earlier it was, but they never went to conferences. They rarely traveled from Massachusetts, but something made them say, well, let's go to that conference because Eben Alexander, that doctor who was in a coma and had a near-death experience, is speaking there, really out of their comfort zone to go to a conference like that. So they went, and after Dr. Alexander spoke, well, they weren't much interested in the other speakers, but oh, there's this medium there, Suzanne Giesemann. Well, we might as well go listen to her. Something made them sit in the front row. When I go like this and say something, it's because we know it was their son, Wolf. So they're sitting there, they don't know anything about me at all, and I'm flashing a bunch of slides up on the screen because I like to do presentations with slides. And all of a sudden I started talking about my stepdaughter, Susan. I show a picture of Susan with my wonderful husband, Ty, who's listening downstairs. Hi, Ty. And I show a picture how, you know, Ty and I were both retired Navy officers. Susan was a Marine Corps sergeant. And then I show this picture of how Susan was killed, struck and killed by lightning. And I don't think I noticed in the front row that Beth gasped, reached out and grabbed Mike's knee because Wolf was struck and killed by lightning. So right away, that's one of those God things, you know, like what made them listen in when it was the first person they'd ever heard who also passed the way their son did. That Mike got in line afterwards for people to come up and talk to me. And he waited till the very end. And when he told me how Wolf had passed, I gasped because I had not met anybody else who passed as Susan did. And we chatted a little bit and then went our separate ways. And the Sunday of the conference, I was sitting in the dining room of the hotel having breakfast. I remember it well. I might have even been with Elizabeth. I don't know who I was with, but I'm midway taking a bite of scrambled eggs and I look up and there are Mike and Beth, and I recognize them a little bit. That's that couple. Oh yeah. And all of a sudden I excused myself from dinner, breakfast, put the fork down, went over and walked up to them and said, I'm supposed to give you a reading. And they said, what? And the rest is history. You'll have to read the book. But I just recognize that as the way our kids bring us together. I call that a setup. And I'm going to be sharing with you tonight quite a few setups from across the veil. I want to tell you right off the bat, at the risk of disappointing anybody, I'm not going to be doing any readings live tonight, mostly because I just don't trust myself today. I did a reading this morning for a couple with a child across the veil and could not sense their daughter for the life of me. Had to call it off. And in this case, because I couldn't tell what was going on, we rescheduled it. Sometimes I just know that I'm not the right medium for somebody, but in this case, we're going to try again. But I don't want to disappoint anybody. And I also have been in the audience for gallery readings, and I sit there and I just want to hear from Susan before I knew what I know now. I just want to hear from Susan, and then it's not Susan. So what I want to do, what my specialty is one-on-one readings. And then with the permission of those people who had the readings, sharing the magical validations that come through, the setups, all of those to inspire all of you here tonight, especially because this is the holiday season. My guides have told me over and over, don't give any more weight to one date than another, but they also know we're human and we do that. And the holidays are special because of the traditions that we have around that. And I know we're missing our loved ones more than ever. My goal tonight is to let you know more than ever how much they still are very much around us. All right. So let me look. I had made some notes of some stories. Let me see. Some of you may have heard some of these stories. There are a couple new ones, especially the one why we have Iris waiting in the wings to share with you tonight. But I just shared this the other day on an interview with Michael Sandler, but I just so love it. Ty and I travel around the country in our RV every summer, taking the messages of hope on the road. And we were smack dab in the middle of the country, going across Kansas. And Ty's driving the big RV and I'm on the computer doing emails. And here's an email from a man who reached out and said, you know, I know you're not taking people on your waiting list, but I'm going to be in Florida where we used to live on these 2 dates. And just by any chance, could I have a reading with you in person? That's when I'm going to be there. And I thought, oh gosh, well, we're not even going to be there because we're still going to be on the road that month. And then he had included a phone number. And something made me go on Google and look up where that phone number area code was. I don't normally look up phone numbers or anything, but it was just a what I call a snag from Spirit. So I did a search and his area code was Kansas City. And I looked at Ty and I said, where are we staying tonight? And he said, Kansas City. Why? I said, I think we're being set up by somebody in Spirit, by this man's daughter. So it was really fun to make that phone call. And I dialed and he tells me later, his name is Jeff. He was in a doctor's office and he looks down, he sees a Florida phone number and he picks up. I said, Jeff, this is Suzanne Giesemann. He said, I just emailed you. And I said, yeah, I know. And I said, I called to tell you that I'm sorry. I just can't do that reading for you in Florida. I'm not going to be there. And he said, oh, that's maybe some other time. And I said, yeah, you're in Kansas City, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, then how about tomorrow morning in my bus? Because we're going to be in a campground in Kansas City. And he said, what? And it was just beautiful because he and his wife came to the RV. And that's when St. Ty goes for a walk. And he gives me so much support in this work. And his daughter came through so beautifully with lots of validations. And mostly an answer that answered a question for him that he had long been wondering. So clearly she needed to make sure he got that answer and made sure we came together. Of all the mediums he could have reached out to at all the times, it was just beautiful. And you know, that kind of timing, those kinds of setups happen because this is the bottom line. They don't come from far away. Their reality interpenetrates our reality. I'd like to liken the spirit world to another station on the same radio dial. And we just have to learn to tune to their frequency. It's a higher frequency because they no longer have a dense body, but they're able to listen in on us, see us, even know our thoughts. That may be a scary thought to some people, but once you get to the spirit world, there are no secrets at all. There's also much greater understanding of why we do the things we do. So all those things that you didn't get to say or you wish you could say now, you can say them and know that they hear you. All right. I like setups that happen on specific dates. When I end up doing a reading for somebody and it turns out to be the angelversary, the day that the child passed, or the mother or the father. One beautiful setup was, we were on the road again and it was on Easter and we were supposed to get underway that day and something malfunctioned in the bus. Very reliable, that bus, but that morning we couldn't leave. We had to stay an extra day. And I know this was a setup because we were like, I'll tell you how remote it was. The nearest Walmart was 1 hour away. Now, you know, that's remote. So even as remote as it was, there happened to be a mobile RV repairman staying in that campground. So I know we were being looked after, but I suddenly had this snag. Oh, we're here for a day? I could do a reading. So I looked at my waiting list and I asked Spirit, who am I supposed to do the reading for? And this one of them just kind of jumped out at me. And we're talking spur of the moment. I reached out and asked this woman, are you available? Oh yeah, I'm available. Well, okay, let's meet at such and such a time on Zoom. And so I had no idea who she had across the veil. We start the reading and I tune in, and the very first thing I saw were rose petals. In my mind's eye, rose petals coming down from the sky, dropping down to the ground. And then I sensed her mother across the veil. My client burst into tears. Turns out that the previous Easter, and this is Easter morning, she was so missing her mother, she had gone to the cemetery and littered rose petals all over her grave. And just a beautiful, here we have roses here, just a beautiful validation and a beautiful way that her mom let her know, you know, I'm still here. And for all of us, not just when we visit a grave site, right? All we have to do is think about them and they hear us. It's like a doorbell goes off. Oh, here's mom and dad thinking about me again, and they drop in. So you could pretty much kind of pat the bed beside you or the chair beside you and kind of say, are you here? And trust me, when Helping Parents Heal has meetings, the kids have meetings. I've had this validated over and over again. They know each other across the veil. So let me see, another setup. Ty and I traveled past Unity Village. That's the headquarters of the whole Unity organization. And it's also in the center of the country. And I was going to check out the campus for a workshop that I was going to do there. And I was just going to walk around the campus a little bit. Ty was dropping me off for an hour. I was going to meet with their director of events. And the voice of my guide said, take your tape recorder. What? Why do I take my tape recorder? I don't need it for my meeting, but I have learned follow orders, right? So I just grabbed the tape recorder and threw it in my tote bag. Off I go to Unity Village. Ty drops me off. I step out of the car right by the bookstore. And here's this woman. There's nobody else in sight, just the two of us. I looked at her. She looked at me. And you know, when people recognize you, there's a kind of look. And she gave me that look. I said, this woman knows me. And I said, you look familiar to me. And she says, you're Suzanne Giesemann. I said, yeah. Have you been to one of my workshops? She said, yes. And I said, oh, what brings you to Unity Village? And she said, well, I'm on my own private silent retreat. I have a child who passed 4 years ago, and I'm just here to honor them. Now notice she didn't say son or daughter. She just said them. And I thought, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, it's nice to see you again. And we went our separate ways. As soon as she walked off, I hear this voice. I need to talk to my mom from the spirit world. I thought, oh my gosh, got goosebumps. And I thought, well, she's gone now. So I said silently, not knowing who this is, well, if I'm supposed to do a reading for your mom, I'll do it. But you have to make sure that we cross paths again, because this is a big campus and I don't know where she went. So I think Ty dropped me off for 2 hours. I was going to have lunch there, and they have a beautiful dining room. So I went into the dining room and I said, Spirit, time's running out here. You better bring her across my path. I walked out of the dining room. Here she comes. Now, it's not just accident that she crosses my path. She told me later she was wearing sandals, sitting in the rose garden by the fountains, just quietly contemplating. And suddenly she's looking down because her feet are on fire. All these ants start crawling across her feet, biting her feet. Could that be Spirit saying to the ants, you know, get her to move that away? So she got up and she started walking, and that's how our paths crossed. And I said, well, I'm glad to see you because I'm supposed to give you a reading. She says, when? I said, now, right here. So they have tables and chairs outside, nobody around. We pulled up the table and chairs, sat down. I don't know if it's son or daughter, but I tuned in, and oh, it was a daughter. She was just so clear with beautiful messages for mom, showed us how she passed, and how beautiful. I happened to have my tape recorder with me. So we had pulled it out, put it on the table. We got the whole thing on tape for her as a memory of the way her daughter went to such lengths to make sure mom heard from her that day. So we are so much a part of one big web. And if I do anything tonight, it's to show you how that works, how they're working together with us, how we move on together, and how they jump over backwards to help us know that they're here and get us signs, even if we don't know that they're from them. let's see, my favorite story of a setup from one of my books is actually not my story, but some of you may not have read my very first metaphysical book, The Priest and the Medium. That's the biography of medium Anne Gaiman. She's married to a former Jesuit priest, Wayne Knoll. What's really funny is when I wrote that book, I had no idea I had these abilities. I am not a born medium. I've worked very hard to develop them, and I'm still working hard. Especially after mornings like this morning, right? We're very human and also souls. But now that I'm a medium, people see my book, The Priest and the Medium, and they turn to Ty and they say, "You were a priest?" And I bust up laughing because that's like the farthest thing from Ty. He's a retired Navy destroyer captain, and I'm so proud of him. But in that book, chapter 12, The Priest and the Medium, I'm going to tell you the story because it's just so magical. So Anne was in demand as a medium working in Florida, and she had a long waiting list and a full schedule. And one day a woman called her at home, we're going to call her Carolyn, and asked, "Can I have an in-person reading with you?" And Anne said, "Oh, I have a very full schedule, but you know what? Somebody just called and canceled for 2 o'clock today. That's only an hour away. You can have it if you can get here in that time." And the woman said, "No problem. I'm only like half an hour away. I'll be there. I'll take it. Don't give it to anybody else." So Anne comes out of her 1 o'clock reading, and here's the lady, Carolyn, waiting for her 2 o'clock reading. But she brought a friend with her who we'll call Sarah. And Carolyn says, "Can you do a reading for my friend Sarah too?" And Anne says, "Oh my gosh." She's like me. She hates to say no to people, but she said, "I actually have another client, John, after you. But if she sticks around, I could squeeze Sarah in after that one." So Anne takes Carolyn into her reading room, tunes in, and has a beautiful connection. Discerns Carolyn's mother, her name Dorothy, and discerns another loved one. And Carolyn says, "Do you see my brother Jack?" And Anne says, "No, I don't see him. Nope, not yet." And then Anne describes this beautiful Victorian house that she sees, describes the weeping willow tree in the front yard. And Carolyn says, "Oh my gosh, that's the house where I grew up. In fact, I know that tree, and that's the last place I ever saw my brother Jack." And then a few other loved ones came in, and beautiful messages from Dorothy and for Carolyn. Lovely reading. So Anne says, "Well, I'm sorry, our time's up, but why don't you come out here, sit on the porch with Sarah, and look, here's my next client pulling up now." So car pulls up, this man gets out, and he walks past the ladies on the porch. They go inside, they sit down. Anne greets him, goes through her invocation. She sits down, and the man's name is John. And she says, "I'm tuning in here." And then Anne didn't say exactly what she saw because she was a little confused. That woman, Dorothy, from the previous reading, and the grandfather who came in were standing off to the side. And she thought, "Oh my goodness, I didn't close down the last connection from the reading." But in steps another man. She described him, and John said, "Oh, that's my father-in-law. My wife will be so excited." Named him by name. So clearly she's connected. But then all of a sudden, she's seeing that same Victorian house again. She didn't quite understand what was happening. She did sense something. She said, "John, I sense that you're going to be returning to Florida again soon." And he said, "No, that's not going to happen. The only reason I'm here, and I traveled all the way from New York, is to have a reading with you because I have tried many mediums, and all I'm trying to do is locate my long lost sister." And all of a sudden in Anne's mind, Mother Dorothy is going like this. Whew, I can't tell the story without getting goosebumps. I don't know if you have them now, but all of a sudden Anne realized what was happening. And she says, "You've come all the way from New York to find your sister, and she's sitting on my porch. Come with me." She walks her outside, says, "Carolyn, this is your brother, Jack." The two looked at each other. It's one of these moments that they hugged each other. Anne cannot tell this story without crying. She was crying as she told them to me for the book. she looked at Jack, and said, I guess you will be coming back to Florida now, after all. The reason I love this story so much is you can see what had to happen to bring that brother and sister together. Just like our kids who have passed, our parents, anybody who's passed knows what's going on in your life. They see you. I'm not happy in my readings unless I get a current event, something current in your life every time to show you this truth. They are still part of your lives. And in this case, that mother, Dorothy, had been following her kids, waiting for just the right opportunity to bring them together. She knows that John is traveling to Florida to have a reading with a medium, Anne Gaiman. She knows her daughter is there. So somebody planted the idea in Carolyn's head. Who do you think it was? Dorothy. Call Anne Gaiman now for a reading. But she also had to plant the idea in the woman who had the 2 o'clock reading in the first place. Cancel your reading. Very rare for Anne to get a cancellation. So we have 2 things happen there all at once. And can you see the third piece here? Mom also had to put in Carolyn's mind, take Sarah with you. Because if she hadn't, what would have happened? Anne didn't have her last name. She didn't have her phone number. This is in the days before cell phones. And Carolyn's reading would have been over. She and John would have passed as they were coming and going, and they would have missed each other. But because she followed that thought that she probably thought was her own, she took her friend and they had to stick around. I just love that story. And so a beautiful, beautiful example of a setup. Another of my favorites, I think many of you have probably read Wolf's Message, but just to show you how our loved ones know what's going on, Mike and Beth and I talked about this just the other night as well, this moment where I was giving presentations about Wolf's Message before I wrote the book. I didn't know I was going to write a book about Wolf until we were driving back in the RV from someplace in South Florida where I had just given heart gifts. And suddenly Wolf dropped in on me and he said, put this all in a book. I said, you want me to write another book? And he said, yes, it will really help people. And I said, I'm halfway through another book right now. I'm tired of writing. And he said, it's important. So this is all silent. I was driving the bus at that point. Ty's beside me, no idea I'm talking to a spirit. This is how near they are, of course. And I said, all right, if you really want me to write a book, I need a really big sign. And this is what I want all of you to learn to do. Ask for signs and ask for specific signs. So I didn't want to just ask for a cloud that looks like a wolf. I said, okay, if I'm going to write the book, it'll probably be a little book. So if you really want me to write that book, I want a sign that has something to do with a book by that guy who wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, Mitch Albom. Okay, I want a sign of something to do with that because that was a little book. 2 hours later, we arrive home. We drive up to the mailbox station in our development. I go to get the mail. I step back in the car. I get in the passenger seat. There's a package from Mike and Beth. Beth tells me she never sends people gifts, but something told her to send a gift to me. I hadn't even written Wolf's Message now, right? I opened the package and in it is the latest book by Mitch Albom. I gasped so loud, Ty stuck his foot on the brake and went, what? I said, I'm sorry. He no longer even reacts when I gasp. It's just become so commonplace in our family that we get these setups from spirit. But Wolf nudged Beth to mail that book to me, then puts the thought in my head. We have a conversation, write the book, tells me what sign to ask for, but I don't realize it. That's what I want you to realize. As you ask for your signs from your kids, You will ask for specific signs thinking you're asking for it, but they know what lies ahead for you in the near future. They know what's coming. They know what you're going to see on a billboard, or they'll pull your attention to a license plate or something you've asked for at just the right time. And that's how it works. Really cool stuff. So let's see. How are we doing? Lots of time left. We'll get to you, Iris. Hang in there. I have no shortage of stories. Let's see. Oh, beautiful setup from Spirit. Doesn't have to, well, it has to do with my furry child. Okay. 1 year ago this week, our little dog Gretchen passed to the spirit world, and I grieved her terribly. I was so grief stricken that I knew I couldn't do readings. So I just canceled all readings for a week and started to get my legs back under me and wanted to get back in the saddle doing readings. And so I thought, well, I don't want to disappoint anybody if I'm not ready to do readings. So what can I do? I need to do a reading for somebody who's not going to be disappointed if I can't connect. Do you see how important the medium's energy is? So I need somebody that already knows this is real, that already knows their loved ones are around. Who's it going to be? And I open up my email, and there's an email from a friend of mine, Connie, and she says, Suzanne, did you know that our friend Lois Ann's husband, Lowell, passed recently? I said, oh my God, did I know that? Turns out I did know that, but I had completely forgotten, and it had been 6 months, plenty of time for Lowell to adjust and learn how to communicate. I could hear the angels singing. This was my setup from Spirit, because not only had I done readings for Lois Ann and brought her mother through, I wrote about it in my book, Messages of Hope. Lois Ann is one of the characters of True People by name in the book, and our reading when her mom came through was there. So Lois Ann totally knows the spirit is real, already knows that Lowell is fine. And so I would not have done it if I didn't have a good feeling I would connect with Lowell. But if I were to fail, she would be okay. So I connected with Lois and I said, how about we do a reading? And she said, okay, may my daughter sit in on it? Yes. That reading was so beautiful. We ended up using part of it as a teaching video in my mediumship class with the Shift Network. This beautiful moment in the reading with Lois Ann and Lowell, several beautiful moments. So I knew I was okay. Still grieving Gretchen, but able to put it in a box long enough, that grief, put it aside long enough to do readings. So the very next day, I scheduled a woman named Chris, K-R-I-S. Actually, my assistant Lynette set it up for me. I look at my calendar, reading for Chris. And so this is the first reading I've done after Gretchen passed. I get Chris on the camera and I said, okay, Chris, you ready to go? And she said, yeah, but don't call me Chris. That's just my name for emails. My real name is Gretchen. Oh, is that beautiful? We had such a good connection with her loved ones. It was a beautiful reading. We even got a great grandmother. I cannot tell you when I've gotten a connection with a great grandmother. I usually don't go back that far. Well, guess what? 1 month later, we got a new puppy and we named her Nellie. She's such a sweetheart. Nobody can replace Gretchen, but we love Nellie to pieces. And we put pictures of Nellie on Facebook, and I got an email from Chris/Gretchen. Are you ready for this? Suzanne, that great grandmother you brought through, that was kind of rare for you to connect with great grandmothers. Guess what her name was? Nellie. You can't make this stuff up. Why would we need to make up anything when the spirit world loves us so much and just loves to show us how they bring us together, how they help us, how they are with us? That is my message for you in this holiday season. They're so close, especially during holidays. And I know the years that I grieved Susan before I discovered I could connect with her, how much we miss them. But don't give up trying to connect with them ever. We all can connect with them in some way because you are a soul too, here and now, not only human. One more story before we bring in Iris. Just another setup from the spirit world. So I showed you how Lynette sets up my readings for me. I just put on my calendar, I'm available this date at this time, this date at that time. And then I look and I say, well, she filled that one, she filled that one. So I went to do a reading a few months back. I look at my calendar on my phone. It says my reading is for who? There's no read. I'm sitting there. I knew I had seen it days earlier. I knew I had a reading. I sit down at 9 o'clock and there's no name. I was like, I quickly text Lynette. I said, who's my reading for? I don't want to look stupid and go in my Zoom room and I don't know her name. She gave me her name, but I had this text saying this is her name. So I did the reading and she was younger than most of my clients. And I was very surprised when her father came through. I was surprised her father had already passed. We had a beautiful connection with her dad. I can't remember who else came through, but at the end of that reading, he pulled out all the stops Dad did. I said, your dad's telling me he was an engineer. And yes, he already told us that he passed from pancreatic cancer. Yes, and yes. And I said, oh, he's telling me you have a brother. He doesn't want to forget and not mention his brother. She goes, yes. And I said, and he says, your brother's a lawyer. She looked at me and she said, did you research me? Now, maybe in the past I might have been insulted by a question like that. Today, that's a compliment. That means Spirit did a really good job getting stuff through. But not too many people ask me that. And that's why I knew this was a setup. I said, well, I have proof for you that I didn't research you. And I hold up my phone and I show her the text and the time sent 1 hour earlier to my scheduling assistant, Lynette, who she's been working with, saying, Lynette, who is my client today? There's no name on the calendar. I said, I couldn't very well research you if I didn't even know your name until I logged on now. So how does a name disappear from a calendar? The same way your loved ones make your TV turn on, the same way your loved ones get a bird to peck on the window, is because they are pulling out the stops to let us know that they're still around. So now we have another setup, and I'm going to bring in Iris Mashula to share back and forth with you this setup, how it happened. Iris had been part of a spiritual group and met a woman named Laura, who is a sound healer and a yoga teacher. And they had been communicating by Zoom for quite a while. Iris is in Florida, Laura's in Sedona. They never met, but Iris was talking about grieving her daughter Dana's passing. Meanwhile, I have this friend named Candace, who is a sound healer, and she traveled from our home here in South Carolina to Sedona this summer. And I found out that we were going to be in Sedona at the same time. I said, Candace, let's get together for lunch. And Candace says, well, I'm meeting this sound healer named Laura. Do you see the pieces starting to come together here? And so somehow, and it's really not important to the story, Laura starts talking about this woman, Iris, she's been talking to, and Candace talks about this, that she was having lunch with this really well-known medium named Suzanne Giesemann. And it just so happened that the names came together, and Candace came to me and said, you know, I really think you need to give a reading to this woman named Iris, because all these pieces are coming together. And I said, oh, I have a really long waiting list, but all of a sudden it's snag. This is a setup. I am supposed to do this reading for Iris. So I agreed to do it. And hang on a sec. Where are my notes? Here we go. Iris, are you there? You just have to talk and you'll come on screen.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So I knew in advance that your beautiful daughter, Dana, had passed suddenly while running, but that's all that I knew, right?
That's all you knew.
Yeah. So hang on. What I love about this reading is I usually don't feel those in spirit before I start the reading. I shut myself off so I can live a pretty normal life. But even before this reading, I could feel Dana's presence. And I remember starting the reading and I said, Iris, I've been feeling this even before we got started. It's funny, but I can feel your daughter's personality. And this is not a word I would generally use to describe someone, but your daughter is fierce. And I'd like Iris now to explain why you went, oh my God.
Yeah. So here I'm having this reading, and it was miraculous that I was even having a reading with Suzanne. And before the reading, I was anxious, and a cousin of my husband's cousin's wife, and his cousin is in spirit, she called me, which I didn't take the call because I was too nervous, but it stoked this memory. After Dana passed, we spoke, and my cousin Gwen said to me, Iris, if I could describe your daughter in one word, I would describe her as fierce. And when Suzanne's and Gwen called me right before, so that was in the front of my thoughts. And she said that, and I was like, oh my God. So that was just one.
That's one. You said this is validating the whole point about how our loved ones are in our thoughts. They know what's going on. And clearly Dana was listening in on that conversation and just putting that word in my mind and making sure we got that point across. And then I was just so able to feel that personality. I was also able to really, through her showing me and telling me, describe 3 issues, emotional issues and challenges that she faced, and Iris validated all of those. So we don't need to go into those, but it was just, she just right up front showed us this. It's not just me reading Iris's thoughts. Dana was saying, this is what I struggled with, and this and this. She showed me that her mom was wearing Dana's ring, and that it was she said, a super connector for her. What was with that ring, Iris?
The ring is, and I happen to be wearing it. And this is a funny story because my children, I have a son here and a daughter, and my mother was their only grandparent. Everybody else had passed. And this ring was bought years before Dana was born, and my mother loved it. And when my mother passed, my mother wore it all the time. And I said, I don't want the ring. It's dated. It's from, I had other things from my mom. And Dana's like, I'm resurrecting that ring. I love that ring. And she was very like, Dana was just, I'm who I am. I'm authentic. And she wore this ring all the time. And that day I was on Zoom. So, my hands are like this. I'm not bringing my hands up. But when she said, you're wearing Dana's ring, and it's imbued with her energy, because Dana wore that ring all the time.
If I could, that's another really nice message for everybody, that you've probably heard of mediums doing a process called psychometry, where they hold a piece of jewelry from someone, because what we wear really is imbued with our energy. So she made that point that she wore it all the time, and that her mom was literally carrying her energy around with her. So that's very cool. She showed me
say one other thing, and she said to you, I know my mom, she's never going to want to take off the ring, but it's okay. You could take it off. You don't have to wear it every day, but for the beginning, wear it. And I've just been wearing it. So I just thought that was funny too. Like, she knew that Dana's personality, like she knows my personality, and came through you to say, she will not take that ring off now.
Of course she does. And your kids know all about you, everybody. She showed her brother playing a guitar to her. This one really blew us both away. The way she said it, we can't validate what they're doing across the veil right now, but when they give us evidence like we've been sharing, that backs up that what they tell us they're doing across the veil is valid. But the way she said this was super duper. Dana showed me she loves to travel. She said that in the spirit world, she has visited Paris and the pyramids and Israel again. She said it just like that. Why was that important, Iris?
That was important because what made me go was that Dana did love to travel, and she's never been to Paris. She hadn't been to the pyramids, but she was in Israel once. And why did Suzanne say she's visiting Israel again? So that was mind blowing because she was in Israel. So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
anyway.
it's very cool. And then that shows us that they do travel around and they do get to visit anywhere. It's like in the movie Field of Dreams, where you want to be, you put your mind there and you go there. And that's what's so beautiful about the spirit world. They can visit multiple family members at once. My guide Brenda has shown me over and over. She can bilocate, trilocate, because once we don't have the body, we are back to our pure state as consciousness and travel with our thoughts and experience with the mind. So I loved kind of a tender moment when she said, and I said, I don't know why she's saying it this way, but there's always a reason. She says, I love you, mommy. And it was clear that Dana was an adult.
Yeah.
Iris.
Dana used to love to call me that.
Yeah,
So she always called me mommy, sometimes mama. And when she said that, that really, because she was an adult and she would hold my hand walking down the street. And she had just turned 30. So that really, really touched my heart.
Yeah. And then they do know what you need to hear. And she said, and I share this with Iris's permission, and we can all relate to this. She said to stop focusing on the arguments we had. So she's in her mom's head. She's watching since she passed. Stop focusing on the arguments we had.
You know, like most mothers and daughters, Dana and I had a very enmeshed and very close, and I don't want to say complicated, but you know, one of those type of relationships. And you know, sometimes she would get upset with me, or I would get upset with her, and then she passed very suddenly. And the funny story is that the day before, I was so bored. It was COVID, and I had watched 6 hours of conspiracy theory on YouTube videos. And she's like, really? Tell me. And so we were Zooming because she lived in New York and I live in Florida. And I was telling her all this, and she had that devilish look on her face. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, nothing. I said, did you just record me? And you're going to put this on your Instagram. Dana, if you do this, I am not going to talk to you. And we went back and forth. And you know, and it went fine. You know, we wound up, you know, it just was a little tense for a bit. And, but I wound up like suffering and thinking about why did I care so much? And I just should have let her. And then other things we had, you know, in our past argued about. And
if I may, Iris, and just the bottom line of that, because I know that all of us have those moments of the things we say and the things we regretted, and our family members see all of that in the life review, and they see the role they played in it. There's total understanding, total compassion, and she made that point, and it applies to all of us, doesn't it? And then just the final piece here, there was a lot more. We're just pulling out some of the things that happened there. But I knew, like I said, I knew that Dana had been out for a run and just passed suddenly. It could have been from anything, but my heart palpitated. So I knew she was showing us that it was her heart. And I said to Iris, I sensed this was her heart, but Dana says I had a defect. So Iris said at that point, the tests had come back inconclusive. Well, there's a little magical follow-up here, if you'd share that with us.
yes. So, and this is very recent. And, you know, there were some things like Suzanne said, just keep it. So we didn't really know. And it
If I could interrupt, when you say just keep it, but there are some things in every reading that the sitter doesn't know. Some things are always something that's going to be just wrong, but then there are other things you just don't know. And so when Dana said I had a defect in my heart, she said, no, we don't know. And that's when I said, just keep that in your mind, just hold on to that. So,
and just to say, this is another incredible synchronicity. So I was following my friend Barb, who is part of this group, and she has a notebook. And I was so disorganized with, like, you know, all the podcasts we watch and the websites. And so I said, I have 2 notebooks. I'm going to put them together. And I happened to do it like 2 weeks ago. And I was sitting there and I opened the one of the books and I read that exact. It turns open to the page where it says Dana had a heart defect. And it was, I wrote down some of the things because that day Suzanne didn't have Wi-Fi and I wanted to make sure, just in case I didn't record it right, that I would have some of the things. And I read that. Well, that night, because my son lives up north too, and he went to the hospital, and so they call him. He calls my husband and myself, and the medical examiner they had taken some extra samples, and he called and he said that Dana did indeed have a rare heart defect. And I just couldn't believe that day I read those words.
That's a setup, you know, and I just want to thank Iris for coming on and allowing us to share that together. I know, Iris, it hasn't even been a year since Dana passed, and look at you. And I mean, it's the holiday season, and I know you're grieving, of course, but I just have to congratulate you on, I know that Dana looks at you and likes to see that smile.
Well, thank you. And I really feel privileged and honored that I was able to get this reading from you, Suzanne, and the evidence, and to really help me, because I know we all struggle. And I want to say, I always say, I am a doubter. I have that New York skeptical state of mind. And I feel like Dana knows that. Like, it's hard for me to, believe for myself. But then when this happened, I just can't deny it. And why I'm happy to share this all with you, because it's the same for you. Even if we're not having the readings, or we have that person we exactly want, or we can't get in, that our children are near and dear. And that's why Helping Parents Heal is a lifeline for me. And I know for so many of you. So
thank you so much. And that's why I'm so glad that Helping Parents Heal vets their mediums. And I just want to tell all of you that I always say the test of any reading is when you leave and say, that was my child, or that was my mom, or that was my dad. And that's the test. In your heart that was them. So I'm just so grateful to do this work. I think I'll share one more story. And before we run out of time, I was asked and invited to speak to a Helping Parents Heal group up in the Pacific Northwest before COVID, right? Can't wait to get back to in-person readings, in-person meetings and readings. So I drove to the leader's house. She was having a meeting at her house, and the small group was going to gather there. And I get up to the front door, and there's a door knocker. You don't see those too often. And there's a doorbell, and I stood there. It was kind of funny. I was like, which do I use? The doorbell or the door knocker? And this voice says, use the doorbell. Okay, fine. I push the doorbell and I hear this rawr, 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 big dog voice. And the woman opens the door, and there is this pit bull. I have dachshunds. I know there are some lovely pit bulls, but I was a little intimidated. And she goes, oh, Wesley, come back here. Come back there. Don't worry. Wesley won't hurt anybody. So we went in the backyard. Everybody was gathering. Her husband was there. And I just wandered around. I knew I was going to be doing a group reading. I was trying to get my head in gear. And I walked off, and I'm looking up, and I just remembered a vision I'd had the previous day about an accordion. I went back and I sat down with the group, and I said, actually turned to the husband, Dan, and I said, for some reason, I'm supposed to talk about an accordion. I think this has to do with your son. And he rolls up his sleeve, and there's a tattoo in his son's honor, and it's an accordion. It was like the spirit world is saying, don't worry about doing a group reading. We got your back on this. And their son was the first one to come through. And it was really funny, because the second I brought him through, the dog, the pit bull, jumps up on the little patio bench where I'm sitting and snugs right up beside me. He's looking in my face like this, pressed against me. That's all I could do to focus on the reading. And everybody's like, look at Wesley. He doesn't do that. And I said, well, your son is saying this was his dog. And your son is saying he's a rescue dog, but he says, Wesley rescued me. And they said, yeah, that's absolutely right. And they'd never seen him act like that before. And when I do a reading, I invite the spirits to just completely merge with me, to blend their energy field with me. I don't see them. So I'm like the blind medium. I have to feel them, sense them, hear them. And so clearly Wesley sees him because he's staring at me. And then, just down the block, a firecracker went off, really loud bang. And right in my ear, Wesley goes, "Arr!" and growls this menacing pit bull growl. And mom says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Don't worry about him. He hates loud noises, especially that door knocker." So clearly Wesley was, his owner, the son, Parker, was there with me at the front door, like, don't touch that door knocker. It's going to be bad enough when you ring the doorbell. But one cool thing before we wrap it up is that at the end of Parker coming through that day, I always ask those in spirit to say, what signs do you send your loved ones, your family? And he showed me a dragonfly. And the parents looked at each other and said, "No, he doesn't send us dragonflies." So I checked with him again. And I said, "He is absolutely showing me dragonflies as a sign for you." So I don't want to sound cheesy, but it's going to happen. Well, they started seeing dragonflies like crazy, but the most beautiful one, and a beautiful way to wrap this up, is that mom went with her daughter to a lake and they were swimming, and there's this dragonfly in the water and it was dead. And she felt really bad about it, especially after her son had said, "I'm going to send you dragonflies." So she gently scooped it up, and she was just going to carry it to the shore and lay it on the ground. And she's standing there thinking about her son. And all of a sudden, one little leg moved. And she gave a start, and then the other leg moved. She went like this, and its wings fluttered, and it flew away. I got goosebumps. And she could hear her son saying, "I can fly now, Mom." And that happened not just once, but twice. In fact, she wrote that up in the Helping Parents Heal newsletter. So they do fly now, our kids, and they fly around and they visit us all the time. Not just when you think about them. They are right here, because here is just another channel on this radio dial of consciousness. So we miss our loved ones so much, especially at the holidays, because we have patterns and traditions. And it takes a while for that energy to just lessen and soften. But in the meanwhile, you can create new traditions. Some people set a place at the table for their loved one, make a toast to them. It's not wishful thinking. We had a miracle the other night at dinner. Actually, we were invited to Irene Vuvalidis' house, and Mike and Beth were there. And we were all talking about our kids. I was getting drop-ins from the kids. They were telling me things going on that I couldn't have known. Like Carly across the veil says, "Mom just pulled a thorn out of my dog Linus." And indeed, Irene had just done that. And the miracle was when all of a sudden, Ty, who doesn't see spirit, said, "Well, Susan just said XYZ." And everybody whipped around and said, "Whoa, now even Ty." So don't give up if you haven't sensed them. Just know, just trust. If I've done my job tonight, I've opened up your belief system a little more to how very close they are. So thank you, Elizabeth and Irene and everybody, for letting me talk to you this evening.
Thank you. That was fabulous. And I feel so grateful to you for coming on so close to the holidays, and also for Iris for writing, for talking about that wonderful story. What an amazing group of synchronicities to have the two of you get together like that. I want to thank all of you here, all of you parents, for being on here. It is so wonderful to see you every evening, and I just feel so grateful to all of you. And I know that all of our kids are right here, as Suzanne said. Every time that we hold a meeting, they all are having a blast together. And I know that one of our mom's children is celebrating their first birthday in heaven today. And so because of the fact that they're all together already, they are having a blast celebrating today. And anyway, I'm so glad that all of our kids have brought all of us together. and wishing you all the happiest of evenings tonight. We have 2 more events tomorrow. One is going to be with Becky Hasseltine, and one is going to be Mike Edwards, who's doing Helping Fathers Heal, having Tina Powers. They don't conflict with each other. Hopefully you guys, especially the dads on here, can attend both of those. And thank you again. And we always allow people to unmute themselves and say thank you and goodbye to Suzanne,
Thank you,
Iris,
Suzanne.
and
This was a
Irene.
wonderful
and
Thank you,
everyone.
Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank
you
so
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
so much, Suzanne.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Good night from Virginia Beach.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
To everybody. Thank you.